Yo, what is up everyone? Back here with another video. This is actually gonna be our second video of the day. Right after I finished recording the first video you guys saw, I pretty much had to decide which video I wanted to record, right? Um, but yeah, pretty much it's gonna be a restricted tier list. I kind of just wanted to go over all the restricteds that I think are good. Pretty much I'm gonna be talking about them not in a vacuum this time, but kind of how they relate to the other restricteds, the most amount of combinations they can be used with, and so on, right? So obviously, even though it's going to be showing the single restricted, right, in like different tiers, I'm still going to be talking about like how they kind of interact with the restricteds, right? So let me actually pull up a showdown tab here for you guys. Pull up this, and this. Okay, cool. So first Pokemon I want, let me close this. First Pokemon I wanted to talk about is pretty much this Pokemon. It's irrelevant. The first Pokemon we're going to talk about is actually Dialga. So Dialga is a really interesting one, right? Dialga basically has the ability to pretty much abuse Dynamax in a pretty strong fashion because of its high special attack. You can run Life Orb on it, and you can run a lot of different coverage moves on it. Now, in Series 11, there was a Dialga variant popping up that pretty much had Gothitelle and Dialga, and it's really good at exerting a bunch of pressure versus a lot of common meta threats. Basically because Dialga has like kind of ridiculous coverage moves. You can run like Max Flare, you can run Blizzard, you can run Flamethrower, you can run Earth Power, you can run Ancient Power. Actually, Power Gem is better. It's like a Power Gem. And pretty much these cover like majority of the things in the format, right? Like it's actually kind of nuts. So pretty much you're able to exert a bunch of pressure with Dialga. You have a bunch of coverage moves. It works really well with trapping, right? Now, basically the other thing to consider, because it's too restricted, is typically when you're using something like Dialga, because of the niche it has, like it's very small, you typically probably want to use it with Kyogre majority of the time. And I'm going to be taking points off for that because I feel like if you can only pair next to one restricted, it limits your flexibility. Like, let's look at the rest of the restricteds, right? It doesn't pair with Zacian because you double up on the steel type. Eternatus don't. Zygarde, it's not great with, right? Kyurem White, it makes no sense with. Calyrex Shadow, it doesn't really make sense with either, because then you're just really susceptible to Yveltal and just getting snarled. We continue down, right? Doesn't work well with Ho-Oh. I mean, I guess you could use it as like a counter restricted, but like Ho-Oh just kind of gets sniped by Groudon, and then also like Groudon snipes like, you know, anything else. And so on, right? You see, like, not too many things pair well with this thing. The only other partner I could see maybe next to Dialga would maybe be Groudon. Very hesitant Groudon, but I really don't see it being good with anything besides Kyogre. Yeah, I mean, this core is like kind of neat, and like I guess it gives Dialga some semblance of a niche, but like for the fact that like it literally only performs on one team, I'm gonna give it B, right? Like it's not awful, like you can use it, you know what I mean? um but it's just not that phenomenal. Also, let me add a row below. I'm gonna make this the useless tier. Oh no, not that, hold on. Go, and then this is going to be the useless tier. And this is going to be the, yeah, this will be useless. Useless. Right, so we're going to move Calyrex on to useless. Don't use Calyrex. I think it's fair to put Dialga in B. I think it can work in that niche that I mentioned. But obviously it's not that great, right? So yeah. Eternatus. So Eternatus honestly has me really unimpressed. I have not liked it at all from what I've seen. I know it did well in that one Series 11 team that like won the regional or whatever, but like Eternatus is really ass in my opinion. Like it is just not good. It like its stats are okay. In theory, it should be fine, but like it's just so lackluster. And the only partner that really works well next to Zacian, which they both don't max, right? Which in theory you're like, oh, okay. But the problem is that like, why wouldn't you just pick a better partner for Zacian, right? Like, why wouldn't you use Kyogre, who can pressure more things in the metagame? Why wouldn't you use Groudon, who gives you good partners in terms of Venusaur and Charizard that you can take advantage of, right? Eternatus doesn't really do anything spectacular. Like, even in terms of, like, a special dragon, like, Palkia and Kyurem White just outperform it like crazy. I really don't see too much use for it. I don't think it's that great. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting it in C tier. I don't think it's the worst. Like, obviously, useless is straight up useless, you know, like don't use it. I don't think, actually, it might be considered worse. I'm trying to think. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I'm like debating putting it down here, but I feel like because of Dynamax Cannon, it at least deserves to be there. Like, I could see maybe one team with it working, right? Like, there's some restricteds where I'm just like, bro, these are so bad, there's like no way this thing's gonna work, right? But yeah, anyways. Okay, next Pokemon, Giratina. Kind of the same boat. Giratina's not that great. I will say one thing. Giratina's one niche that is kind of cool is if you are running Origin form, you wall Charizard, you wall Venusaur, you wall Groudon, and you wall Kyogre, right? That is kind of cool. Now, let me explain why that is not enough to save Giratina. You basically, I mean, you can run an Exization, which lets you deal with, like, the fairies it doesn't like dealing with and stuff, and you can have other answers Zacian. But the main problem you're going to encounter is when you run into, pretty much Yveltal, right? Calyrex Shadow, Calyrex Ice. Like, there are a lot of Pokemon that kind of pressure it, and it's kind of gross, in that regard. However, it does have that small niche of walling those certain Pokemon, so for that reason, I will put it in the C tier next to Eternatus. I don't think it's the worst. I don't think it's really that great. But yeah. Next up, Groudon. So Groudon I'm going to be putting in the... It's like between S and A for me. So I really think that it's going to end up being S along with Kyogre and Zacian, mostly because of how splashable it is on every team. I'm going to say that Groudon probably works in the S tier, mostly because... It's not even mostly because of Groudon. It's literally just because there is... Actually, no. I'm going to put in A tier only for one reason. So basically, the logic is like next to Zacian, right? Like, you want to be able to enable, like, your two other partners. And having something like Charizard and Venusaur is, like, actually insane next to Groudon, right? Like, these are the two best weather abusers that we've ever had in, like, any metagame, and, like, you have, like, the damage over time and everything in this core, and Groudon basically does that. Now, the only reason why I'm not going to have it in S tier is because, like, Torkoal can do the same thing. That being said, Torkoal is, like, a completely different Pokemon, but, like, there is actually contention for, like, a viable Sunsetter, right? You don't always need to do this, because then you could always do something like, oh, let's say, like, I have this restricted, like, oh, I wanted to use something else on my team that would fit it a bit better, right? And then, like, you could fill it with, like, maybe Cali Ice, right? Or, like, something else. And it can work kind of successfully, right? So, there's a couple different options there. That being said, it's, like, tough. I'm, like, right in the middle. I do think Groudon is much better than Torkoal in this format. And, like, it does have a lot of potential in other archetypes. You know, I'm going to put it in S. Anyways, the partners it can enable is kind of ridiculous. It works great with Porygon 2, which I think is really good in this format. It synergizes really well with Incineroar as well, giving it, like, the boosted fire move. So it's just overall really good, right? Like, I can kind of see that being, like, really, really strong. So, yeah. I mean, I think that overall it's just a really strong Pokemon, you know? But yeah, so... Next Pokemon is going to be Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh's a weird one, man. Like, in theory, right, it should be able to beat Zacian, which is a really valuable tool, right? Now, the problem is it loses to literally everything but Zacian, besides maybe Reshiram and, like, a few other things. Kyogre destroys it. You have... I mean, shit, does Giratina beat it? Maybe. Yeah, honestly, it might even beat it. Also, too, you have literally, like, so many Pokemon that just outclass it. Like, I guess the one niche it has is, like, the Fire Flying type, a lot of bulk next to Groudon, but, like, you kind of get sniped by other Groudon. There are a lot of Pokemon that have coverage for you. Like, you even lose to Zygarde, right? And, like, Xerneas isn't relevant enough where Ho-Oh has an actual place in the metagame, and because everything's running random rock coverage because they can Dynamax, like, it's kind of not that phenomenal, right? I would probably put Ho-Oh in the C tier. I don't think it's a D tier Pokemon. Like, I think C is pretty fair for it. Because I feel like D is, like, reserved for, like, the worst of the worst, you know? But, yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like that's fair for Ho-Oh. Next up is Kyogre. Kyogre is going to be S. If you guys don't know this, Kyogre is usually one of the best Pokemon in every single restricted format. Only weakness is that it, like, obviously gets kind of bodied by, like, Venusaur, but, like, you have so many partners to compensate for that, that's not even an issue. Do you know how many restricteds Kyogre works with? Like, I have never seen a more ridiculous Pokemon that can fit on, like, so many archetypes. Like, look at this. Just go through this with me, okay? It works with Zacian. Right? It can maybe work with Kyurem. That's debatable. I'm not going to say Zygarde, because Zygarde's not true. It works with Calyrex, right? Because you can run Bulky Ogre. You can run Bulky Slow Ogre. It works with Calyrex Shadow. It works with Dialga. It works with... Even Ho technically used to run with it, but I don't think it's going to be relevant in this format, right? Continue down. Theoretically, if Lunala was good, it could be run with it, right? It can run Rayquaza. I don't think Rayquaza is that great. That being said, you can run it with it, right? Like, it literally pairs well with every single restricted. Even Palkia. It pairs so well with Palkia because you just power up its water moves, right? Continue down. Solgaleo, it makes sense. You, like, go down here. Even Groudon, its counterpart, it can work with because you can run Double Weather. You can run it with Yveltal. You can run it with Zacian. Like, it's just so busted. It's so strong. Not only that, right, but like you get such great partners with Kyogre, like Eternatus, right? Like, think about how many strong Kyogre teams have like won Series 11 events and like Series 8 events and like just previous restricted cups events. There's a reason why Kyogre pops up everywhere. Like, it's actually insane. And its ability to set the rain and like synergize with a bunch of different Pokemon means there's so many creative ways to use it, right? Like, obviously the basic way, right, is like, okay, I have Eternatus, I have Zacian, I have Regieleki, I have Incineroar, and then I have Amoonguss, right? Like, that's standard. We know that, right? Like, that's basically Kyogre. But the fact that you can do such a standard build that's successful, or kind of go a little bit out of the box and run different ways to use Kyogre, like even like bulky Trick Room teams, is actually ridiculous. Like, it's so strong. And it fits on a lot of teams. For that reason, I think it's S alone. It's definitely higher than Groudon, just because I think it's more splashable in a lot of teams. Groudon's pretty splashable in a bunch of teams, but like, if I look at the teams, right, like Groudon Calyrex works, like both forms. Not really here. Works with Kyogre, which is fine. It's kind of with Kyurem. I'm kind of unsure about that. Doesn't really work with Palkia. Continue down. Works with Reshiram, I guess. Then we go further. It works with Yveltal. It works with Zacian, right? Like, you'll see that it has like a couple partners, whereas Kyogre can like be splashed on with a ton of different things. Don't use base form Kyurem. It's really bad. I'm also putting Lugia down in here. Lugia is probably the worst restricted that is not a base form. Like basically a Pokemon that doesn't have a better form that kind of outclasses the original Pokemon is what I mean. Yeah, Lugia is like pretty bad. I do not like Lugia at all. I think it's really bad. It just doesn't have anything going for it. I mean, it gets walled by Zacian, which is really bad. I mean, I guess you can run Earth Power, but like, have you ever seen this? Okay, let me just put this in context for you guys. Kyogre has like 150 special attack, right? And like, look at his bulk. That's like pretty good bulk, right? Groudon has like 150 attack. Now let's look at Lugia, who is also a restricted Pokemon who theoretically should be doing a lot of damage. How much damage would Lugia be able to do? Wow, okay, cool. We have bulk to start, but why does it have 90 attack and 90 special attack? You're not using physical moves, so this thing's useless. Look at this. Even if you max out its special attack, right? 156 is its max, right? This is modest max investment, right? Oh, my bad. I didn't mean to do a second Lugia. Kyogre has a higher special attack uninvested than Lugia. Like, there's literally no reason to use this thing. You may be like, oh, well, you know, there's no other, like, good flying mons, right, that, like, work. No, bro, like, there's no reason to not use, like, Yveltal, you know? Like, Yveltal's better. The dark typing works more. Like, psychic typing's really bad. It's not useful coverage in this format, because flying already covers for Venusaur, right? Like, psychic's not really hitting anything, but yeah. And I am putting Lugia on blast here. I think it's in desperate need of a rework in a restricted format, or, like, just in the game. Lunala is interesting. See, Lunala used to be used in tandem with, like, the bulkier restricteds like Groudon and, like, Kyogre. And theoretically it could work. I think if you build it from the standpoint of this Pokemon is not supposed to max, I'm going to use it in a supportive role to, like, set Trick Room, be bulky. It can work really well next to another restricted, right? Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that you're going to have a really good Calyrex answer. It's going to be very crucial that you have something good for Calyrex, because you basically need to be able to get up Trick Room to like really beat it, because if it just outspeeds you, it's probably going to kill you, or you live on 1 health, but then you're pretty susceptible to getting picked off, right? That being said, I think particularly Lunadon has a lot of potential in this format, particularly the Charizard, like Charizard, Venusaur, and then like Incineroar filler, right? Like this like core can actually be really cool in my opinion, and it offers you a better tricker mode that you don't normally get. Now, obviously, you need to be careful because you're leaving yourself susceptible to Calyrex. So that's like my main thing with it. But Lunala does have some potential, so I'll put it like, I'm debating between high C or low B. I'm gonna put it low B. That might change to like high C, just be a little bit better than Eternatus, but yeah. That's kind of my opinion on that. I'm just gonna put Mewtwo in the D tier. It's just not good. I mentioned Psychic type isn't that good. Like, Mewtwo's stats in Gen 1 were like insane at the time, but like now it's just kind of like on par with like every other restricted stats. Like, you don't even offer that much unique, right? Like, sure, you have Nasty Plot, right? Yeah, it gets Nasty Plot, but like it's too frail in like look at this, like 90 defenses. Like, in theory that's not bad, but like in this format where the power level's so high, like can't take any hits, right? And like even max, it's kind of underwhelming. So I don't particularly see this Pokemon being that great. In previous non-Dynamax formats it was a bit better, but like with Dynamax there to compensate, like it just does no damage. Maybe Mewtwo. Do I put it like low? No, 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 no. Mewtwo's bad. I'm gonna put Necrozma down here too. Necrozma's bad. Don't use it. Like it just has better forms, right? Like there's no reason to use it. Palkia is interesting. I'm gonna put Palkia in the B tier. I'm gonna put it in like above Dialga, and it's because it works on more than one team and it does its job really well. Basically, Palkia is a great anti-meta restricted in terms of dealing with a lot of the popular things. So, as I mentioned, Zacian, Groudon, Charizard, and Venusaur teams are pretty strong. Palkia can do pretty well into all 4 of those Pokemon if you're running Max Flare on it, right? So pretty much you can deal with an entire Sun team with your coverage, right? You can deal with Swordfish, which is like Zacian and Kyogre, because you resist both their main stabs. And then if the Zacian's running Play Rough, it's a little trickier, but like majority of the time they opt towards the fighting coverage. And it's just incredibly difficult for difficult for Pokemon to deal with Palkia, especially Max, right? Like it actually has decent bulk and has decent like offenses, right? So it can actually put a bunch of pressure. I think it works particularly well next to Kyogre, in my opinion. I also think it can work really well next to Zacian, which that won like a restricted tournament a while back. So those are 2 really cool uses of it. I'm definitely excited to see Palkia. I think it's gonna fit on a bit more teams than Dialga will, but yeah. Rayquaza is next. Unfortunately, Rayquaza is really outclassed by the other dragons. I love how I looked up useless instead of Rayquaza. That's very tragic. I mean, it has a cool shiny at least, but like, okay, so theoretically, like, okay, these stats are cool, right? But then you remember that Zacian exists and that you cry because like it outspeeds you, kills you, and you can't do that much to it. Also, too, Rayquaza's ability to change weather was better when it had the Mega form because you could Primal Revert, right? And like protect your weaknesses, right? So you're not quad weak to ice anymore. You had a little bit better stats overall. Like in comparison, like to show you how nerfed Rayquaza is, like look at this. So in its base form is 90 defenses, which I already mentioned isn't that great bolt. Its speed tier sucks. Like you're not outspeeding the base 95s, even like Charizard you're not outspeeding, right? And then on top of that, your HP is like fine, but like it doesn't matter if you have like lackluster bulk. Now, Mega Rayquaza retained the same HP stat. However, its defenses got boosted by 10, and you may be like, oh, well, that's not that bad, but like it makes a big difference. And its speed being boosted and its attack being 180 actually completely changes the Pokemon, because then it's actually pressuring some offense, right? And you could even use it next to something like Zacian, because you could do like Zacian plus Rayquaza, Weather Disruption, like putting on Behemoth Blades and like Airstreams or something, right? Assuming you could use Mega and like Airstream or whatever. But like, yeah, it's just not great. Unfortunately, we are stuck with base form Rayquaza. It doesn't really do the stuff it needs to. I'm gonna put it in C tier because I don't think it's like as bad as Mewtwo, but it's like pretty damn close. Yeah. Reshiram is interesting. I'm going to put Reshiram in the low B tier only because I think that it actually is a niche in terms of checking a couple things in the metagame, right? So Reshiram, if you look at it, right, into Charizard can damage it, but I think it does get, yeah, it gets Ancient Power, which is kind of a cool tech, right? You can even run like Assault Vest on it and run like Blue Flare, Ancient Power, Earth Power, Draco Meteor, right? And like you have coverage for a lot of the Pokemon in the format, and particularly into Charizard, you can go for a Rockfall. Venusaur, you can go for a Flare. Zacian, you can flare it, and Groudon does not like taking max flare from Reshiram, right? So you destroy one of the common cores. If you pair it next to something like Groudon, then you get the extra benefit of having something to change away Kyogre's weather from Swordfish. So pretty much you have a matchup into Zacian, and you also like aren't as pressured by Kyogre because Reshiram's not taking damage from Kyogre because of its like high special defense in like Sun. And then on top of that, you compare that with Venusaur, which just pins the Kyogre as well. So I think it's a really nice anti-metagame choice. And I'm actually gonna put it above Lunala. Cause like I might even, yeah, I'm gonna put it above. It's like in between. It's like close. I'm gonna say that they're tied. I'm gonna put Reshiram a little bit higher than Dialga, only because I think being able to deal with like the Premier Zacian comps is like kind of busted. But yeah, no, it definitely has some potential. I could see Reshiram actually being pretty decent in this format, especially because Zacian's so popular. So next up is Solgaleo. Solgaleo is gonna go. It's like either in front of or next to Dialga. Solgaleo basically has the nice option of being like a Steel type Dynamax Pokemon that can't be intimidated and is actually like good. Like Metagross kind of sucks because you struggle so much with like your speed tier, and then on top of that, like this doesn't look like that much better, but it actually makes such a huge difference, right? Even if you don't invest. The bulk is pretty decent, and the attack set's pretty strong. Along with that, you have full metal body, which is basically clear body, so you can't get intimidated. So you're putting on a ton of pressure, and like steel restricteds are really strong because like if you look at how they match up into like the rest of the restricteds, majority of the time like they can match up pretty decently, right? Like that steel type is a huge asset. It's one of the best types in the game. And like this format is kind of starved for steel types. Like if I'm looking at steels, right, like Zacian, Zamazenta, Dialga, Duskmane's Solgaleo, like the only good steel type options are literally restricteds. Everything else is just kind of bad in restricted formats. Unfortunately, and like you know, it's just a better Metagross, right? So it kind of works out decently. So I'm gonna put it above because I feel like a lot of teams would like a steel type. It also can work really well with Kyogre. They complement each other in terms of like obviously covering Solgaleo's weakness to Charizard with like the rain, and then having the steel moves to kind of pressure the things that Kyogre doesn't like. Along with that, even if you pair it with the different restricted, there are some potential combinations there that can work well. Even something like Yveltal and Solgaleo, having a steel type Pokemon that can max next to it is really strong and usually something that Yveltal enjoys. So next up is Xerneas. Unfortunately, and this pains me to do it because I really like Xerneas. It's going to go in high C tier. I'm not going to put it below Eternatus because I do think it's a better Pokemon as a whole than Eternatus. However, Dynamax really ruins Xerneas, which sucks. Xerneas is a really cool Pokemon, but it's really bad in this current format. Dynamax just completely ruins it. There are some ways it can be run, I think. Like, the one set that I've seen that I really like is, like, Xerneas, what's it called? Groudon, and then you can run it next to, you know, obviously Venusaur, and then you run it next to, like, a Landorus and, like, a Incineroar, and you just make it, like, a super bulky comp. Let me get up the full team that I was thinking of, which like I think is cool. This is like the one team where I think it might actually work. But basically, you're focused around like the other maxes, like the Landorus or the Venusaur maxing, and then playing support with your like Groudon and Xerneas, and using your Xerneas as like a late game win con. The best set for Xerneas in this format, in my opinion, is going to be the Psyshock Moonblast set because it gives you something to actually hit Venusaur once you get the Geomancy up, right? Because max Venusaur is very common. And you actually need something to hit it. Unfortunately, there's no fire coverage, right? So you can't use that. But there is a niche there in terms of like using it. Even next to like Double Intimidate or something, I think it could be potentially good. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Xerneas. Yveltal, I'm gonna put in the A tier. I think that Yveltal is really good. Obviously, it's my favorite Pokemon. You guys can see through the background. Also, I'm pretty, you know, like, I use it pretty much on like every team I compete with in restricted formats. But basically, it's strong and it matches up really well into a lot of Pokemon. The one thing that it needs to be mindful of is its Zacian matchup, but because you have another restricted to compensate for it, it works out really well for it. And I could definitely see it being very strong. I mean, I'm gonna be using it. I think it's strong already from what I've used it, so I'm looking forward to using it more, and I think it's just really good. I mean, it works really well next to a lot of different Pokemon. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife in that way. Like, it works well next to Calyrex Ice. I wouldn't say next to Shadow. This one, though, if you run it next to Calyrex Ice, you really need to be careful about Zacian. It works next to Groudon. It works next to Kyogre. It works next to, what's it called? Maybe Dustmane, but Dustmane's not that phenomenal, right? Solgaleo, I think it works great next to, and it works great next to Zacian, right? So those are a pretty good amount of restricteds we get into. Yveltal matches up well into pretty much any of the restricteds that can be Snarl spammed. Also matches up decently into Groudon because you can foul play if they like Swords Dance. You can Snarl down Kyogres. And in certain situations, even you can match up decently in the Zacian. You can foul play Calyrex Ice, and you can go for a Sucker Punch or like even Snarls on the Calyrex Shadow, right? So it kind of works out. Next up, Zacian. I mean, do I even have to say it? Like, okay, if you look at my two most recent videos, I think I bring up Zacian like a lot of the time, and even this video, like I brought up Zacian a lot. Zacian just really good, man. Like it fits on almost every team. It's just super strong. Like, I see it being like the best restricted in the metagame because it just works with so many Pokemon. Like, you know, I said Yveltal was a Swiss Army knife. Like, no, Zacian is like a Swiss Army sword, dude. Like, it works on every single team. Like, the only restricteds it doesn't work with are like the no-brainers, right? Like, you're not gonna pair two steel type restricteds together. That makes no sense. But like everything else it can work with. Like Zacian Kyogre, that works. Like Zacian Groudon, that works. Zacian Yveltal, that works. Zacian Palkia, that also works. Like, it pairs off so well because it doesn't cost a Dynamax slot, which is really valuable, especially with like such strong supporting Pokemon that abuse Dynamax in this format. So it's really strong. It's like insane. Next up, Zamazenta. Zamazenta is a really interesting one. I think it is much better than it was in Series 11. And the main reason why is literally because of one partner. Maybe two. It works as a really cool support restricted. Basically, Zamazenta gets access to a lot of interesting moves, right? And these moves are best used when you actually have a partner that you can use it with that's like kind of matches the power level. So basically it gets access to coaching, right? Gets access to Snarl, and I believe it gets access to close combat. Yeah, so you can pretty much run a set of like coaching, close combat, Snarl, Behemoth Bash, right? Obviously you're not going to be doing as much damage as Zacian, but that's not the intention. The intention is to sit on the field, annoy the opponent, and spam coaching into none other than one of the Pokemon on this list, Zygarde or Rayquaza, right? And pretty much just go crazy with them, right? And like, because it get max anyways, it works out perfectly fine. And like, its attack set's still fine. It can snipe Incineroar. I don't know if it gets like a slowdown move, something like, no, it doesn't get Charm. That's so sad. It doesn't even get any slowdown moves. But yeah, I mean, obviously the whole point is the coaching stuff anyways, right? But yeah, for that reason, I'm going to put it above Lunala. Or, I'm going to put it... I'm going to put it here. I'm going to move this. Solgaleo can be used on a couple different teams. Reshiram can be used on one team, so I'm going to adjust this. So pretty much the way I'm thinking of it is how often they can be used and on what archetypes they work on. So like these Pokemon are really splashable, kind of splashable, pretty decent with a couple of restricteds. Works with like 2 restricteds or like 3 solid restricteds. Works with 1, but it does its job really well. Same with Dialga. Works with 1, does its job okay, right? It like kind of has a niche. This one can work with a bunch, however, it's like a little bit underwhelming, so it's not underwhelming, but like it's kind of outshone by like another restricted, so it really needs to be built around precisely, so that's why it's down there, and then from there it doesn't really matter, right? But yeah, hopefully that contextualizes it for you guys. So next up is going to be Zygarde directly. I'm gonna follow that up and put that in the... It's like weird. I kind of want the Zygarde, Here, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do the Zeza tier, right? Oh no. Wait, how do I do this? What do I name it? I'm just gonna have my own tier for them because I feel like they literally only work together, right? Like, what's it called? I'm gonna call it the Zamazenta cheese tier. Zamazenta cheese tier. Or Zamazenta coaching tier. That's what's gonna be called. Right? So like these Pokemon pretty much like being there, right? So they're like in this area, I'd say, because they kind of only work with each other, which kind of sets them like apart in a weird way. So I think this is pretty fair. They're like either B or like in a subset of B. So I think that's pretty fair. Zekrom is gonna probably go in the C tier. So I will say Zekrom does match up decently in Zacian if there's no play rough, but if there's a play rough, it's bad. It matches really well into Kyogre. It matches really well into Yveltal, but after that you start seeing where the cracks are kind of forming, right? It does not like Calyrex Ice. It doesn't like Groudon. It doesn't like dealing with opposing Palkia, because Palkia is usually going to outspeed. Does not like dealing with Dialga. Doesn't like dealing with Reshiram. Solgaleo walls it. Lunala is like neutral. Zygarde demolishes it if it has like Misty Terrain up or something, right? And you can just spam coaching into it anyways. And then, you know, as we get down, like, those Pokemon don't really matter. But, like, there are still certain things that, like, really snipe Zekrom in this format that it doesn't like dealing with. It does match up well into Charizard. It can beat Venusaur. But that's pretty much it. So, you know, take that as you will. I'm going to put Calyrex Ice and Calyrex Shadow both in A tier. They're pretty splashable. I think Calyrex Ice actually is a little bit better than Calyrex Shadow. I think Calyrex Ice is a great support restricted, pretty much being able to fit on like a lot of different teams, right? Because you compare it with Groudon, you compare it with Kyogre and do like spread move spam. You can even pair it with Zacian and kind of have that tricker mode along with the like Zacian mode. It can work on teams that are focused on single restricted modes and teams that are focused on double restricted modes. It has a lot of flexibility. I really like the Pokemon. I think it has a lot of potential. So, I definitely see it popping up. And ice coverage, is pretty good. And very few ice types are actually good where they have, like, good coverage moves and, like, stats to compensate for it. So, yeah. It's, like, kind of in between whether or not I want Cali Shadow above or below, Calyrex Ice. I'm gonna put Calyrex Shadow below only because there are a lot more options to deal with it, I feel like. Grimmsnarl's still popular in the format. P2 is still around. Yveltal's a lot more popular now, I think, or like it at least is going to have a little bit more popularity. And that's kind of difficult for Calyrex, right? And also too, Calyrex does kind of struggle with this moveset sometimes, so it has to be cautious. That being said, I think it is really strong and it does work well next to certain restricteds. One archetype I don't think is going to be that great that I see a lot of people using is Zacian Calyrex. I actually don't think that's that strong. I think Calyrex works better next to like Kyogre, Groudon, maybe like what else, right? Like, yeah, it's like okay-ish. I mean, I might even honestly, I'm considering putting it in low B, but I feel like or high B, but that's like I think that's a little too much. So I'm gonna leave it in the A tier, but yeah. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I feel like Calyrex is interesting. Calyrex Shadow, right? Like, what checks it currently, right? Like, Porygon 2 checks it, which is decently common. Grimmsnarl, which is common, right? And Incineroar, obviously. Imagine losing to Incineroar. That's crazy, bro. That's not obviously auto, like, oh, this Pokemon's bad, but, you know, it's not that great. And then, you know, I feel like it's, like, okay-ish, right? And then, like, Yveltal obviously destroys it, right? So, like, there are some things in the format it doesn't like. That being said, like, obviously that's every format, right? But I just feel like there are other restricted options that offer, like, more dynamic combinations that actually do a little bit more. So that's, like, the main thing there. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. This is my list. Make sure to let me know in the comments what your guys' opinion are in this tier list. You know, like, what are certain things in the tier list you disagree with or agree with? And, make sure to, let me know. And then we'll, kind of, I'll be like doing another video tomorrow, pretty much giving out another rental team for you guys to use, and like pace and kind of explaining that team. But hopefully you guys have been enjoying the content. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the double upload today. Let me know if you guys would like to see more double upload days. It can't be every day, obviously, because, you know, I need to make sure to give myself enough time to like work on videos and put out quality videos. But I do really enjoy putting on content for you guys, so don't mind. So let me know if you guys enjoyed the double upload. If you guys are interested in supporting me, make sure to check out the Patreon, which is linked down below. Also, make sure to check out coaching if you guys would like to improve your game in Pokemon. And yeah, guys, once again, thank you for watching the video, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.